The stars twinkled peacefully through the observation deck of the UES Discovery, Earth's premier research vessel. Captain James Miller stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the endless sea of stars. The ship had been exploring the outer reaches of known space for 3 months now, seeking new scientific discoveries and, hopefully, new civilizations. "Captain, you need to see this." Dr. Anna Reed's voice crackled through the intercom, excitement evident in her tone. Miller turned away from the viewport and headed to the science bay, his footsteps echoing through the quiet corridors. The science bay was a hub of activity when he arrived. Screens displayed various readings and data streams, but what caught his attention was the massive holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a ship unlike anything humans had ever seen before, sleek, crystalline, and nearly twice the size of the Discovery. "It just appeared on our long-range sensors," Dr. Reed explained, her eyes glued to the readings. "The energy signature is off the charts. This isn't some lost colony ship or automated probe. This is something entirely new." Miller nodded, studying the vessel's unusual design. "Any signs of hostile intent?" "None so far." In fact, Reed paused as new data streamed across her screen. "They're broadcasting some kind of signal. It's a first contact package, sir." The room fell silent. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries. They had found evidence of ancient civilizations on Mars and Europa, but never a living, spacefaring species, until now. "Let's see it," Miller ordered. The holographic display shifted, showing symbols and mathematical equations that slowly transformed into recognizable patterns. Basic arithmetic at first, then physics equations, and finally images. The aliens were calling themselves the Dominion, and they wanted to talk. "Send our first contact package in return," Miller commanded. "Let's show them humanity's best face." Over the next few hours, the two ships exchanged more information. The Dominion's technology was clearly advanced. Their translators quickly decoded English, and soon they were communicating in real time. They presented themselves as a peaceful civilization interested in cultural exchange. But something didn't sit right with Dr. Reed. She noticed subtle patterns in their communication, the way they dismissed certain human achievements, their barely concealed surprise at humanity's space travel capabilities. She pulled the captain aside during a break in communications. "Sir, I think we need to be careful," she said quietly. "Their language contains numerous terms that imply hierarchical thinking. They keep using words that translate to lesser and developing when referring to us." Miller frowned. "You think they're not being genuine?" "I think they see us as primitive," Reed replied. "They're being polite, but there's a patronizing undertone to everything they say, like adults talking to children." Before Miller could respond, the ship's communication officer called out, "Captain, the Dominion is requesting permission to dock with us for face-to-face discussions." Miller exchanged a glance with Reed. This was moving very fast, but refusing could be seen as an insult. And despite Reed's concerns, this was still a historic moment for humanity. "Grant them permission," he decided, "but implement standard security protocols." And Dr. Reed, "Yes, Captain. Keep analyzing their communications. I want to know everything you can tell me about how they think." As the massive Dominion ship moved alongside the Discovery, neither Miller nor Reed could have known they were watching the beginning of events that would change the galaxy forever. The Dominion had encountered many species before, and they had already classified humanity as another primitive civilization to be studied and eventually subjugated. It would prove to be the worst mistake they had ever made. 3 days after first contact, the UES Discovery's crew found themselves aboard the Dominion's massive space station. The structure was a marvel of engineering, a gleaming spiral of crystal and metal that dwarfed anything humanity had built in space. Captain Miller walked through the pristine corridors with Admiral Stone from Earth Command, who had arrived yesterday through a nearby wormhole gate. The Dominion had been eager to show off their technology, particularly their faster-than-light travel capabilities. "It all seems too good to be true," Stone muttered, keeping his voice low. "They're offering to share their advanced medical technology, their FTL drives, their energy systems. What's the catch?" Miller nodded slightly. "Dr. Reed has been monitoring their behavior patterns. She says they treat us like we're children in a lab. Fascinating specimens to be studied." In another section of the station, Dr. Reed and two other human scientists, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Wilson, were touring what the Dominion called their Biological Research Center. Their guide, a tall alien with iridescent skin who called himself the chief researcher, led them through various laboratories. And here, the chief researcher gestured to a massive database terminal. "We store all our medical findings. Perhaps you'd like to study some basic genetic engineering principles. They might help your species advance more quickly." Reed noticed the subtle insult, but maintained her diplomatic smile. However, her attention was drawn to a screen in the corner of the room. For a brief moment, she saw human medical data scrolling across it, detailed scans taken without their knowledge or consent. "Excuse me," she said carefully, "but that looks like restricted medical information from our ship. How did you access that?" The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. The chief researcher's skin darkened, a sign Reed had learned indicated anger or aggression. "You must be mistaken," he said smoothly, moving to block the screen. Dr. Wilson stepped forward. "No, she's right. That's clearly human genetic data. We never authorized." He never finished his sentence. The chief researcher moved with shocking speed, pressing a small device against Wilson's neck. Wilson collapsed instantly, his face frozen in surprise. "Thomas, run!" Reed screamed, already backing toward the door. But more Dominion researchers appeared behind them, blocking their escape. "We cannot allow you to interfere with our research," the chief researcher stated coldly. "Your species has such interesting potential. We needed to understand your weaknesses." Dr. Thomas tried to fight back, but was quickly subdued. Reed managed to hit her emergency beacon before they caught her, hoping it would alert the security team. In the main conference room, Miller's own emergency beacon suddenly flashed red. Before he could react, alarms began blaring throughout the station. "Security breach in Research Section 7. A computerized voice announced. "Containment protocols initiated." Miller and Stone exchanged alarmed looks and rushed toward the research section, but Dominion guards blocked their path. "This is a simple misunderstanding," one of the Dominion officials said smoothly. "Your scientists became unstable. We had to take necessary precautions." "Let us see our people," Stone demanded. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," the official replied. "There was an unfortunate accident. They became violent, and our security systems responded automatically. Most regrettable." Miller felt his blood run cold. "Are you saying our scientists are dead?" "A tragic incident," the official said, not sounding tragic at all. "We suggest you return to your ship and leave, unless you wish to discuss this further with our military fleet." Hours later, back aboard the Discovery, Miller stared at the bodies of his 3 scientists, returned to them in sealed containers. The Dominion had executed them to cover up their unauthorized research, clearly expecting humans to be too weak and primitive to respond. As he looked at his dead crew members, Miller's hands clenched into fists. The Dominion was about to learn a very important lesson about humanity, the hard way. The United Earth Command Chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from every nation sat in the circular hall, watching the message from the Dominion play on the massive central screen. "We regret to inform you of the unfortunate incident involving your research personnel," the Dominion official spoke with artificial sympathy. "However, we must point out that their aggressive behavior left us no choice. For a developing species such as yours, we recommend focusing on peaceful development within your own system. Any further attempts to venture into Dominion space will be seen as hostile action." Admiral Stone paused the transmission and looked around the room. Captain Miller stood at the podium, his face grim as he finished presenting the evidence Dr. Reed had managed to collect before her death. "They murdered our people," Miller said, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. They did it because they thought we were too weak to respond, because they expected us to cower and retreat. An older woman stood up, General Hayes, commander of Earth's peaceful research fleet. Those who knew the truth understood that her ships carried more than just scientific equipment. For 50 years, she began, we've maintained the facade of a purely scientific space force. After the last war, we agreed to hide our true military capabilities. The world needed peace, and we provided it. But we never stopped preparing. Screens around the room lit up, showing classified images of ships and weapons humanity had kept hidden from the galaxy. While the Dominion saw research vessels and exploration ships, they had no idea about the battle fleets waiting in concealed bases throughout the solar system. They killed our scientists, the Chinese representative stated flatly. They must learn that this was a mistake. For the first time in half a century, every nation on Earth agreed. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, humanity's response was prepared. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of his ship, no longer the simple research vessel it appeared to be. Panels had opened, revealing weapon systems that would make the Dominion's technology look primitive in comparison. Send our message, he ordered. On every Dominion communication channel, on every frequency they used, the same transmission began playing. To the leadership of the Dominion, you have committed an act of war against humanity. You murdered our people. You thought we would respond with fear. This was your first mistake. The message continued, broadcasted in the Dominion's own language. You believed us to be primitive. You saw our research ships and assumed we were weak. This was your second mistake. We are not weak. We are not primitive. We are human beings, and we have been practicing the art of warfare for thousands of years. In hidden bases across the solar system, ships began powering up. Not the simple vessels the Dominion had seen, but real warships built with technology humanity had kept secret even from itself. We gave you the chance for peace. We extended our hand in friendship, and you responded with murder. This was your final mistake. The message ended with a simple declaration. You have 24 Earth hours to surrender those responsible for the murders of our citizens. If you fail to comply, you will learn why every spacefaring race should have a single, simple rule: never anger the humans. In the Dominion's Grand Council chamber, their leaders laughed at the message. They saw it as the empty threats of a primitive species, not understanding that humanity had spent its entire history preparing for war while praying for peace. They didn't know that Earth's research ships were already in position. They didn't realize that humanity's primitive technology was a carefully constructed lie. And they had no idea that they were about to learn why humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they loved war, but because they were so very, very good at it. The 24-hour countdown began. In the Grand Council chamber of the Dominion, an unexpected visitor was causing quite a stir. The ancient trading species known as the merchants rarely involved themselves in political matters, which made their urgent request for an audience all the more unusual. You must reconsider your position on the humans, the merchant elder said, their crystalline form shimmering with anxiety. Our species has traded with 1,000 civilizations over 10,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall. And we have never seen a species quite like the humans. The Dominion High Commander scoffed. They send threats in primitive transmissions. Their ships are barely capable of interstellar travel. What could they possibly do? The merchant's crystalline form pulsed with warning colors. You see what they want you to see. Our data suggests their research vessels have been mapping your defense positions for weeks. Their power signatures don't match their visible technology. Something is wrong. But the Dominion leaders remained unmoved. They had conquered dozens of young species before. Humans were no different. Meanwhile, across Dominion space, other species were noticing strange patterns. A group of space station engineers reported unusual gravitational distortions. A mining colony detected brief energy spikes where no ships should be. A defense platform's sensors glitched for exactly 3 seconds every hour. Each incident was minor. Each was dismissed by the Dominion. None of them realized they were watching humanity's war fleet moving into position, hidden behind advanced stealth technology that the Dominion had assumed was centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. Aboard the UES Retribution, formerly known as the Simple Research Vessel Discovery, Captain Miller reviewed the final battle plans with his fleet commanders via secure quantum channels that the Dominion couldn't detect. "All ships report ready, sir," his communications officer announced. "The Dominion still shows no sign of taking our ultimatum seriously." Miller nodded grimly. "And our special packages? All in place, Captain." Dr. Reed's final gift to them. Before her death, Dr. Reed had managed to plant several viruses in the Dominion's research computers. They had dismissed the code as harmless data errors, never imagining that a primitive species could crack their security. The merchants made one final attempt to warn the Dominion, sending an urgent message. "We have calculated the humans' reaction with our most advanced probability engines. You face destruction if you do not comply with their demands." The Dominion's response was telling. "Your concerns are noted, but unnecessary. These humans will learn their place, just like all the others." They still didn't notice that their long-range sensors were slowly being blinded, one by one. They didn't realize their communication networks were being subtly redirected. They never detected the quantum mines being positioned near their key strategic locations. In the final hour before the ultimatum expired, an old nomadic species sent their own warning to the Dominion. "We passed through Earth's solar system centuries ago. We saw what they did to their own world in their wars. Do not unleash this upon our galaxy." The Dominion dismissed this warning too. Their arrogance had become their blindfold. As the final minutes ticked away, Captain Miller sent one last message to Earth Command. "All ships in position, awaiting final authorization." The response came back immediately. "Authorization granted. Show them why humanity chose peace, not because we had to, but because we knew the alternative too well." Miller looked at the countdown timer. 5 minutes remaining. The Dominion still hadn't responded to their ultimatum. They would learn soon enough that humanity's ships weren't poorly shielded. They were simply hiding their true power. Their weapons weren't primitive. They were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In the last 60 seconds, as the Dominion Council debated whether to send a patronizing response to the humans' childish threats, they remained completely unaware that they were already surrounded. The countdown reached 0. Humanity was about to remind the galaxy why peaceful didn't mean helpless. The first strike came without warning. Across Dominion space, their quantum communication networks suddenly went dark. Dr. Reed's virus, dormant until now, awakened and devoured their secure channels one by one. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as the carefully orchestrated attack began. "All ships, execute attack pattern Alpha. Show them what humanity can really do." Across Dominion space, humanity's research vessels transformed. Hidden panels slid away, revealing weapon systems that had been concealed beneath fake hull plating. Stealth fields dropped, showing the true size and power of Earth's warships. The Dominion's first response was confusion. Their sensors, already compromised, showed impossible readings. Where they had tracked simple exploration vessels, massive battleships now appeared. Where they had seen primitive engines, they now faced technology that matched or exceeded their own. "Primary targets confirmed," Miller's tactical officer reported. "Defense stations are still trying to bring their shields online. Deploy the quantum mines." Across strategic points in Dominion space, pre-planted quantum mines activated. But these weren't simple explosive devices. They were space-time disruptors, technology the Dominion had thought impossible for centuries to come. Their defense stations found themselves trapped in localized time dilation fields, unable to respond in real time to the attack. The Dominion's mighty warships finally began to respond, but they were fighting blind. Their communications were down, their sensors were compromised, and their defensive positions were already lost. "Their main fleet is moving to engage," the tactical officer reported. Miller smiled grimly. Spring the trap. The Dominion fleet suddenly found itself caught between two forces, the visible human fleet ahead, and a second fleet that had been hiding in artificial gravity wells, completely invisible to Dominion sensors. The pincer movement was perfect. "Target their flagship," Miller ordered. "Let's show them what a primitive species can do." The Retribution's main weapon charge, a gravitational lance that could tear a ship apart at the atomic level, technology that humanity had developed decades ago, but kept hidden, waiting for the day they might need it. The Dominion flagship never had a chance. One moment it was there, the next it was being pulled apart by forces its crew barely understood. Their mighty vessel, pride of their fleet, disintegrated into its component atoms. "Send the second message," Miller commanded. On every emergency channel still working in Dominion space, they heard, "This is humanity's response to murder. We offered peace. You chose war. Surrender now, or what happens next will be written in history books as a warning to any who would threaten Earth." The Dominion's response was predictable. They launched a desperate counterattack. Their remaining ships charged forward, weapons blazing. "They still think we're using all our weapons," Miller noted calmly. "Show them how wrong they are." The human fleet's response was devastating. Weapons that bent space itself, missiles that carried miniature black holes, energy beams that ignored shields completely. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for a war they hoped would never come. In the space of 30 minutes, the mighty Dominion fleet was reduced to floating debris. Their defense stations were trapped in time bubbles, their communications were shattered, and their leadership was in chaos. A junior Dominion commander, watching his mighty civilization crumble before what they had dismissed as primitives, sent a desperate message to his superiors. They were never weak. They were never primitive. They were waiting. But it was too late. Humanity had unleashed its full military might, and the galaxy was witnessing why peace had always been their first choice, not because they couldn't fight, but because they knew exactly how devastating they could be when they did. As the battle ended, Miller looked at the debris field that had once been the Dominion's main fleet. "Send word to Earth Command. Phase 1 is complete. Awaiting orders for Phase 2. The galaxy was learning a harsh lesson. Never mistake humanity's preference for peace as a sign of weakness. They had just started showing what they could really do. The Dominion's Grand Council chamber, once a symbol of their absolute power, now lay in chaos. Emergency alarms blared as reports of defeat after defeat flooded in from across their territory. The High Commander stared in disbelief at the holographic displays, showing the systematic dismantling of their once mighty empire. "Impossible," he whispered. "How could they hide such power?" A new transmission cut through their emergency channels. The face of Captain Miller filled their screens, his expression hard as steel. "You believed humans were simple creatures," he said. "Let me show you what Dr. Reed discovered before you murdered her." Suddenly, every data screen in Dominion space began displaying classified files. Evidence of their atrocities against other species, secret research conducted on unwilling subjects, planets stripped of resources and left to die. Dr. Reed's final act had been to steal these files, and now they were being broadcast across the galaxy. "Your own records condemn you," Miller continued. "Every species you've hurt, every civilization you've destroyed, all of it documented in your own words." The merchant ships, still watching from safe distance, began transmitting the data to every corner of the galaxy. Other species, long intimidated by the Dominion, saw proof of what they had suspected for centuries. The Dominion leaders tried desperately to regain control. They launched their secret weapon platforms, hidden in deep space. But as their weapons powered up, they discovered another nasty surprise. "Did you think Dr. Reed only planted one virus?" Miller's voice carried a cold satisfaction. "Every weapon you activate using Dominion protocols now belongs to us." Their own defense systems turned against them. Orbital platforms that had protected Dominion worlds for centuries now powered down or targeted their own installations. Their mighty empire was being dismantled not just by force, but by their own technology. In desperation, the High Commander ordered their doomsday weapon activated, a device capable of destroying entire star systems. It had kept other species in line through fear for generations. The weapon never fired. Instead, a quantum explosion consumed the facility housing it. Human ships had found and neutralized it weeks ago, leaving a fake signal to make the Dominion think it was still operational. "We found all your hidden weapons," Miller explained. "While you were laughing at our primitive ships, we were disarming your entire empire." The merchants, watching the systematic dismantling of the mighty Dominion, sent a message to their trading partners. "Remember this day. Remember why humans chose peace, and why crossing them means choosing oblivion." One by one, Dominion worlds began signaling their surrender. Their leaders, faced with complete defeat, finally understood their fatal error. They had mistaken humanity's peaceful overtures as weakness, their diplomatic attempts as fear, their scientific curiosity as primitive ignorance. Captain Miller's face appeared one final time on their screens. "You killed 3 of our people. We could have destroyed your entire civilization in response. Remember that we chose not to. Remember that humans are capable of both justice and mercy, and you're alive because we believe in both." The High Commander, his empire in ruins around him, finally spoke the words that ended the war. The Dominion surrenders unconditionally to Earth. As human ships secured Dominion facilities and freed their subjected species, Miller sent a final message to Earth Command. Phase 2 complete. The Dominion is defeated. Their weapons are neutralized. Their atrocities are exposed, awaiting further orders. The response came swiftly. Proceed with Phase 3, reconstruction and reconciliation. Show them that humanity knows how to build peace as well as wage war. The galaxy watched in amazement as humans, having demonstrated their overwhelming military might, immediately began helping rebuild what they had destroyed. They offered medical aid to injured Dominion citizens, helped restore vital services, and began establishing new protocols to prevent such conflicts in the future. It was perhaps their most powerful message of all, showing that true strength lies not just in the ability to win a war, but in the wisdom to build a lasting peace. The lesson was clear. Never mistake humanity's kindness for weakness. They had perfected both the art of war and the craft of peace, and they had just shown the galaxy why they preferred the latter. 1 year after the Dominion's surrender, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Grand Hall that once housed the Dominion's council now served as the meeting place for the Galactic Cooperation Assembly, where all species, large and small, advanced and developing, had an equal voice. Captain Miller, now Admiral Miller, stood before the assembled representatives. The room was packed with delegates from hundreds of species, including many that had been subjugated by the Dominion. Even former Dominion leaders sat among them, though now as equals rather than conquerors. 1 year ago, humanity was forced to show its true capabilities, Miller began. Today, we gather to ensure such demonstrations never become necessary again. The Assembly was voting on the final draft of the Galactic Rights Accord, a document that would guarantee the rights of all spacefaring species and establish protocols for peaceful first contact. Dr. Reed's name headed the document as a permanent reminder of why it was needed. In the years since the war, humanity had surprised the galaxy once again, not with weapons, but with kindness. They had helped rebuild Dominion worlds, shared medical technology with suffering species, and established trade routes that benefited everyone. The humans are remarkable, a merchant elder commented to their fellow delegates. They possess the power to destroy civilizations, yet they choose to build them instead. The changes were visible everywhere. Former Dominion research stations now served as hospitals and schools. Their weapon facilities had been converted into scientific research centers. The same humans who had dismantled their empire were now helping them build something better. We thought we understood power, a former Dominion commander admitted during the assembly. We measured it in weapons and territory. The humans showed us that true power lies in the ability to choose peace even when war is easier. Miller activated a holographic display, showing the new defensive network humanity had helped establish, not to control or threaten, but to protect all species equally. The same technology that had won the war now served to prevent future ones. Let this be recorded in every history, Miller declared. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to learn from our mistakes and help others learn from theirs. The assembly voted unanimously to adopt the accord. As the confirmation chimes rang out, a small data crystal was placed in the center of the hall, a memorial containing the names of the 3 human scientists whose deaths had triggered these events. The merchants, known for their historical records, added a new entry to their great database. Remember the Dominion War not as a story of human vengeance, but as proof that the most dangerous species can also be the kindest. Humanity had the power to destroy their enemies utterly, but chose instead to forge them into friends. As the assembly concluded, Miller received a message from Earth Command. New signals had been detected from deep space, another civilization, reaching out to the stars for the first time. The message made him smile. This time, first contact would be different. This time, the rules were clear. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Miller told the assembled delegates in his closing speech, "Humanity chose peace not because we had to, but because we understand the price of war. We built this assembly not because we need it, but because everyone deserves a voice. Remember this, humans will always extend a hand in friendship first, but we never forget those who choose to bite it." As delegates filed out of the hall, a young Dominion scientist approached Miller. "I worked with Dr. Reed briefly," she said. "She would be proud of this." Miller nodded, looking at the memorial crystal glowing softly in the center of the hall. She believed in building bridges, not walls. In the end, her death built the biggest bridge of all. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not to be feared because of their weapons or their rage, but to be respected for their wisdom in knowing when to use them and when to extend mercy instead. The stars look different now, not as a battlefield to be conquered, but as a frontier to be explored together. And if anyone ever forgot the lesson of the Dominion War, they needed only to remember one simple rule. Never anger the humans, not because of what they can destroy, but because of what they choose to build instead.